Hello and welcome once again to today's devotion from the Reverend William J. By the way, I hope that if you're enjoying this, if it's helpful to you, that you'll share it with someone else. And of course, I'm doing these as videos, and it's not for anybody to sit there and watch this video, but that you could listen to it on the go while you're working out or working around the home, whatever it might be, and be thinking through this devotion. Anyway, we'll go on to 1 Thessalonians 5:8. The title of this devotion is called Be Sober. And William J. writes, "This command stands opposed to bodily excess and especially drunkenness. It is painful to think that it should ever be necessary even to mention such a subject among those who profess to be Christians. The Spartans presented to their children drunken slaves, so that seeing their beastly behavior, they might detest the vice. The pagan legislators inflicted a double punishment upon crimes committed when someone was drunk. Christian lawgivers and judges are not equally wise and just, for how scandalous is it to hear men in the court of justice allege that their intoxication was an extenuating circumstance and even on occasion use it to justify their conduct. Drunkenness takes away the man and leaves the brute. It dethrones reason from its seat. It covers the wretch with rags and riches and reduces his wife and children to want and even begging. It impairs the appetite, produces trembling limbs, and such depression that it almost compels a person to repeat the offense, so that they are beaten down physically as well as morally, and it is almost impossible to cure the habit. Let me therefore guard against it, and not only in the grossness, but the guilt. Some professors of Christianity seem to think that they are not chargeable with the sin if they can keep open their eyes and walk from the dining room table to the tea table, not considering that every indulgence beyond natural refreshment is vicious, and that the Scripture particularly condemns those who by gradual training have made themselves strong to drink wine and strong drink. Let me therefore be aware how this sin can grow by degree, and put a knife to my throat if I begin to like it. And instead of being filled with wine, let me be filled with the Spirit. But a pure and holy walk with Jesus is much more than being sober in regard to alcohol. It calls for moderation in all of our desires and affections. It extends even to business. As a man may be entangled, he may be intoxicated with the affairs of this life. And how often did the cares of this life and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful? A Christian may be too mindful of earthly things, too interested in fame, too anxious to add houses and fields. As a man who is drunk is unfit for the duties of his position in life and is obliged to be confined, so it is with those who set their affections on things below. They are unqualified for the high calling of Christ and cannot walk as people who reflect the gospel. Jeremiah says to Baruch, "And do you seek great things for yourself? Seek them not." Let me reflect, in light of Scripture and plain observation, the vanity of worldly things, their unsatisfactoriness when obtained, how quickly they perish, and how many and hurtful lusts they expose. And let my conversation be without covetousness, and let me be content with such things as I have, for he has said, "I will never leave you or forsake you." Sleep is a natural and necessary refreshment, but we may be excessive in this as well as in other indulgences. And alas, how often are we guilty of this pleasure, even to the injury of our health, as well as to the waste of our time? Recreation is allowable and good for us, but we may exceed the bounds set before us for redemption of time and the repairing and refitting of ourselves for duty. Paul exhorts Timothy to be sober-minded. How uncontrolled are some in their opinions, especially in religion pertaining to minor truths, and subjects concerning which are hard to understand. Some are eager and rash and positive in all their judgments, and nothing is too absurd or too ridiculous for their agreement. Again, let me hear the apostle. For by the grace given to me, I say to every one among you not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment. Do not overrate your position, your connections, your abilities, your usefulness, or your performance. For if a man thinks himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Finally, let me not forget how plainly as well as extensively I am to discharge this obligation, nor lose sight for a moment of the argument by which it is enforced. Let your moderation be known to all men. The Lord is at hand. Thank you for listening. You can find many more articles, recorded books, booklets, sermons, and devotions, all from famous preachers and teachers, on YouTube, the web, or Apple Podcasts by simply entering Cherish Ephesians 6:4 in the search bar in any of those applications. Thanks again, and I hope to see you next time.